Okay, here we are today with Nassim Haramein. He's a scientist and he's done wonderful discoveries and contribution for humanity. So we're going to talk about some very interesting things, but I want to start this interview first and foremost to thank him for all the so many years that he has given of his time to research about so many things that most of the people don't get it, like physics and everything, ancient civilizations and things like that. And from all the time that he's given to research, he's come out with very, very interesting and wonderful theories. And maybe one of the most important ones is the geometry of the vacuum. He has decoded, if you let me know because my scientific words are not exactly.
Yeah. All good.
So decoded the Einstein field theory formula, or the unification theory field theory formula. What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unification theory.
Unification theory.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to talk about those things.
Yes.
I actually want to start with. Trying to understand what is so important about the findings that you've made about the vacuum and the geometry of the vacuum. Because, most of us, lay people, we don't understand what the vacuum is. Mm-hmm. And worst of all, why is it so important to understand a geometry of a vacuum? What would geometry have to do with a vacuum, and in what way these two things together have any impact on humanity's consciousness?
Right. Well, that's a really good question. In physics, and certainly in quantum theory, when we looked at the space, when we looked at the vacuum inside the atom, and you could think of it as the space-time structure inside the atom, we found that it was actually fluctuating with almost an infinite amount of energy. That is, the vacuum at the quantum level is not empty at all, it's full. And as well, on the larger scale, on the cosmological level, when we looked at the vacuum of space, we found as well that that wasn't empty, that there's a force in there that's accelerating and expanding our universe. And so it's inaccurate to think of the vacuum as empty, although, the word vacuum kind of misleads us to think that it's nothing, right? Actually, it turns out that the energy in the vacuum is extremely dense. It's renormalized at 10 to the 93 grams per centimeter cube, but actually the equation says that it's infinitely dense. And so when I discovered this, it became apparent to me that maybe the vacuum, the structure of space, is what produced matter. Instead of matter defining space, space defines matter. And when I started to think that way, all sorts of really amazing things came out of it. Like, one of them is starting to understand a unification of the forces. In physics, there's a big problem, that is that we have quantum theory to deal with the small stuff, and we have relativistic equation, Einstein's equation, to deal with the big stuff. But the two don't agree. And for the longest time, we've been trying to find a theory that makes the small stuff and the big stuff agree, because the big stuff is made out of small stuff. So there must be a theory that connects the whole thing. That would be a unified field theory. And it's really important, because if we understand how everything connects and how everything works together, then we can understand the fundamental principles of creation. And when we understand the fundamental principles of creation, we can develop technologies that could completely change our whole paradigm. I'm talking about like technology that can brings us to the stars, to in our solar system, all the galaxy, even maybe multiple universes.
So what is this unification theory about? I mean, what is the unification part of the theory?
Okay, well, without getting into much details, when I start to look at the material world as a function of this energy that's in the space, you can imagine that if this energy in the space is infinite, and since there's a lot of space in the atom is 99.9999999% space. So that means the material world everywhere around us is actually mostly space. Then there must be infinite amount of energy in the atom, or infinite amount of mass, or at least a very large amount, right? And because of the vacuum energy, the fluctuation of the vacuum. And I start to realize that you could keep dividing the atom, getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller bits, and now we're making little particles that are billions of times smaller than the atom, and maybe we were just dividing the space itself, maybe we were just dividing the vacuum itself. That is, that the atom is just a function, it's a little oscillation of the vacuum itself. Like a vortex in a pool, where the water in the pool is the vacuum energy, and the little vortex is what we see as an atom, not knowing that it's actually made of the space itself. And when I started to think that way, the result was that the atoms start to look more and more like a singularity, like a black hole, like a point of infinite density, because it's infinitely divisible. And so I start to treat the atom as a mini black hole. And I wrote the math to describe that, a mini black hole that's exchanging energy with the space, with the vacuum, and the vacuum feeding back energy into it, so that you'd have a radiative side, the electromagnetic field, and a contractive side, the gravitational field. And when I started doing that, when I treated the atom as a mini black hole with Einstein's equation, the numbers came out right, meaning I was getting the right interaction time, the right decay, the right magnetic moment, and so on. And in the paper I'm just about to release, I solve more of these equations and show that you can get the exact right mass for the proton, for a black hole proton, where the black hole mass is inside the proton, but on the outside we measure a different mass because we're on the outside of the black hole. So we measure a much smaller mass, and so on. And so when you do that, all of a sudden you eliminate a lot of the problems that made it difficult to unify quantum theory with relativistic equation. All of a sudden you're treating the whole thing as a black hole structure.
So in one way or the other, the macro and the micro physics came together in a singularity point.
That's right, showing that every point is connected to all other points through the structure of the vacuum that surrounds and that's
and
in
that would
everything.
Be like, you call it oscillation, can I call it vibration?
Yeah, vibrations.
So vibration oscillation is more or less the same?
That's right.
So they are connected through vibrations, that we are all connected through vibrations.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So if we are made out of atoms, everything in the world,
Mm-hmm.
all the material world that we call it material world, and human beings, we are made out of atoms. Then if we are all black holes, then are we also a vacuum? Each person is a vacuum?
That's right. You're made out of 99.9999999% vacuum.
Well, maybe I'm a little more than yours.
And and everything we see, and the only thing that makes it seem so solid is a little electromagnetic vibration of the space itself. And the waves are colliding with each other, so it feels like it's solid and you can't go through it. But it's actually space vibration.
So eventually somebody who dominates the energy can actually go through.
Oh yeah, actually if you could match the phase of oscillation of your hand to the face of oscillation of this, you could put your hand right through it, absolutely.
And how would a person do that? Like, what does a person
Well,
need to do? Because most likely we can do it more than the
table
do
to us,
Uh-huh.
yes. You know, this leads to really what is consciousness, and this is one of the interesting part of this series, that if you're describing everything as oscillating and feeding the structure of the vacuum, and then the vacuum feeding back information to the system, you have that feedback loop that describe consciousness. And when you so then you realize that actually you are influencing the vacuum, you're influencing these oscillations. So somebody that would be a really good at it, like a chi master. When people talk about chi,
like flying and dominating, like we see in the movies of the Oriental movies.
That's
they
right.
Fly,
They do all this stuff.
That's possible.
Yeah, you know, there's been so many masters all around the world, like in all sorts of traditions, that have talked about this energy in the space. They call it chi or prana or mana and all this. And they learn to manipulate it. I can see that somebody could manipulate it strong enough that they could create a phase relationship so that they could put their hand through things. For instance, maybe masters that are healing people and putting their hands through people, that might be how they're doing it, if they're really doing it.
Now, like what you have discovered, the many 64 tetrahedrons interacting with each other in this specific formation that you showed us, the structure of the vacuum. In what way does it relate to the mystical, enlightened minds that understand this unification of everything, and that they don't, maybe they don't know the structure, they don't need to know the structure, they just know that that is true? Why do you think this is important to bring it out to the public, for them to know in a scientific way what you've been able to prove?
Right, well, you know, like I said, many masters might have been able to manipulate the vacuum all this time throughout the ages, but by understanding that this is not some kind of esoteric woo-woo thing, that actually they're manipulating the physics of the universe, the way the universe actually works. When we understand these physics and we understand these mathematics, then it becomes available to everybody. Everybody can start to understand that they're influencing the vacuum and the vacuum is influencing them, and they understand the mechanics of it and all this. And our whole scientific community can understand how all this works. And then technologies can be developed to tap into the vacuum, to interact with the vacuum, to create gravitational field, to, you know, so not just a master in some cave somewhere can levitate, but you can levitate a whole spaceship, or you can, you know, all the things that you would think of as a very advanced civilization becomes possible.
This seems to be still quite far away from us, like levitating anybody, levitating, or even free energy. It was like, if you're talking about the vacuum and infinite energy for anybody to use, how far away do you see that we are entering into these new technologies, and how prepared is humanity to realize that we can actually go much further than what we've done and have free energy? Can you imagine what it is to live with free energy?
You know, to that question, I usually give an example.
Okay.
If you were to go to people on that famous lake where the Wright brothers, you know, on that beach where the Wright brothers flew the first plane, and you were to go to the neighbors there maybe 2 weeks before they did it, and you said to them, you know what? In 2 weeks, somebody's going to come here, and they're going to bring a device that weighs thousands of pounds. And just by moving the air around this device, the device is going to lift thousands of pounds and people with it into the air, they would have looked at you and said, "You're crazy. This is not going to happen. And if it happens, it's going to take thousands of years before we can do that." And actually, that was the belief of most of the scientific community at the time. Actually, all of it. There was many papers written all around the world by top physicists, mathematically proving that you could not lift things off the ground that way. That there was no way you could get air to create enough lift to lift a device on weight, right? That seemed impossible. Yet, 2 weeks later,
It happened.
it happened. And, you know, this is the thing about innovation. What seems impossible today becomes possible tomorrow. And what I think, if I look at our society, if I look at where we're at, I look at our science and our physics and all this, I would say to you that not only are we extremely close to these new developments, some of them have already been done, meaning inventors all around the world have reported being able to extract or tap some of the energy in the vacuum for a fairly long time, and it's just not being possible for us to bring that in our society at this time. But I think we're really close, and our world is about to change dramatically.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I know you've done a lot of research on ancient civilizations, and in our perception of the modern world nowadays, the feeling of the you call it the morphogenic field, I call it the unconscious, or the collective unconscious, like Jung would call it, or both are basically the same. There's a feeling that we are the most advanced of civilizations that have walked on Earth. But from the research that you've shared with us through the videos and everything, it seems that we're not exactly the most advanced civilizations that have walked on Earth.
Right.
What can you tell us about maybe ancient civilizations having more advanced technologies, and maybe about the Mayan calendar? And we don't have a galactic calendar in astronomy, at least not one that I know.
Yes.
But the Mayas did have a galactic calendar.
That's right.
So
very precise one,
very
too.
precise one.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about these ancient civilizations that were more advanced than us, and the feeling that we have that we are the most advanced one nowadays? I mean,
right,
why
there's
is
a
that?
certain amount of arrogance, that has developed in about the last 150 years, because we've, all of a sudden in modern society, and more industrial development, part of our evolution, we've reached technical achievements very quickly. So a certain level.
Like land on the moon and stuff.
Oris, come, Oris. There we go. This is an interview. There is a certain amount of technical developments that have been, okay, Oris, I'm gonna need you to go back to the cabin. So in the last 150 years, we've developed a certain amount of arrogance relative to the ancient civilization.
Maybe since the Industrial Revolution, maybe?
Since the Industrial Revolution, about, all the technological advancements we've achieved in the last 100 years, going to the moon, orbiting satellites and so on. And we've assumed that this has been the most advanced knowledge available on our planet during this human evolution. Yet, when we look back into antiquity, we find all sorts of anomalies. And if it was just one anomaly or two, it'd be one thing. But there is thousands and thousands of examples of anomalies where buildings were built with incredible precision using incredible materials,
Like the pyramids?
like pyramids and so on, and where the precision, the amount of materials, the size of the blocks and so on just doesn't equate to anything we could reproduce today with all of our advanced technologies. There's places where stones that weighs in excess of 1,000 tons were moved miles in like deserts and across mountains and so on. And you know, we can't do that today with the largest cranes on earth and so on. And there is calendars which are extremely precise that describe not only cycles of our planet around the sun, but the cycle of our sun inside the galaxy, which is not anything that's available to any person on the surface trying to figure it out with sticks and shadows and stuff. And so there is a lot of evidence, and I've done a lot of research on that, that there was very advanced knowledge, and that they may have been a much more advanced civilization than ours on our planet prior to a great change that was reported by many, many ancient civilizations as the Great Flood all around the world.
So how many thousand years ago could have that been?
It seems that it kind of ranged between, the end of that civilization ranged between 10 and 12,000 years ago. And so it's way prior to a written history. And there's a separation there as a result of the meltdown of the Ice Age. And that might have been what the ancient people reported as the Great Flood.
So this is something that might happen to us because we have the polar caps melting and so much change with the weather. Are we on the verge of going through another of those cycles of destruction of the planet?
Well, you know, there's a few things there. One is that these very advanced people in this ancient civilization may have left us calendars to tell us about this cycle. And certainly the Mayan calendar and other set of timekeeping pieces around the world from the ancient world, you know, convey this sense that the earth goes through cycles of destruction and that a civilization must be aware of that. But as well, if you think about it cosmologically, planets are not necessarily stable things. You know, there's meteorites, there's comets, there's sun flares, there's change of orbits. All this is in constant dynamic motion. And you know, it's for sure that there is a limited amount of time that the surface of a planet or even an atmosphere is going to stay stable for a civilization to evolve. So whether it's cycle of destructions, which I believe it is, but as well whether the Mayan and the other calendars are correct or not, it is crucial for a civilization to eventually learn how to use gravity, learn how to tap into this infinite source of energy that makes up everything we see, and to transcend and to leave the nest. You know, at one point, the mother has to kick the children out of the nest, and to become a universal being, to live in the universe instead of stuck to the surface of a planet, which is a dangerous thing to do.
Now, as you probably know, there is a lot of shock, mystery, and anxiety around the 2012. In how people, some are thinking it's going to be the end of the world. So many marketing has been done about the 2012 in relation to the Mayan calendar that there's a lot of speculation, obviously. And I would like to see if you could explain how does it happen, this galactic alignment? Because obviously I've heard videos from the NASA say there's no planetary alignment happening on December 21st, 2012. And yeah, there's no planetary alignment that the sun aligns with the rest of the planets in one straight line, but there's a galactic alignment. of our sun with the center of the galaxy. So what does that mean? What's going to happen when we, first of all, I know it's every 30 million years that we sort of cross the galactic equator. So what does that mean? What effects can that have on our planet and on our galaxy, not only in physical terms, but in consciousness terms?
Okay, well, there's a lot of things to unpack in there, okay? First of all, there is an alignment, but it is not a physical alignment, meaning that from the frame of reference to the galaxy, the Earth and the Sun, our solar system is not actually lining up with the galactic center, but actually it's from the frame of reference of a person on the planet, meaning from the Earth relative to the galactic center and the Sun, there is an alignment that's occurring. But we're actually past the galactic equator in the galaxy, and that's what I mean there. However, what was not so well understood is the galactic equator has a certain amount of thickness, okay? And certainly, you know, it's very wide compared to our solar system. But because of the physics I've written, I've shown that actually the galaxies are a double torus manifold, and a torus is like a donut, so imagine you put two donuts on top of each other, and the equator has a certain thickness, and you could think of it as magnetic sheets coming together like that. It would be the two donuts coming together like this, and the Earth and the solar system is in between the two sheets.
At this moment.
At this moment, and I think that was mapped out by this calendar is when we were going to poke into the upper sheet. We're going through that upper sheet, and so from the research I did and from the calculation I did, I thought, well, it would kind of match around 2012 when we would make that leap, that transition. And recently, satellites have just that we sent 30 years ago finally got out of the solar system, out of the heliosphere of our sun, and which is like the wind that the sun pushes all the rest of particles in our galaxy with, right? And these satellites are able to look around for the first time around our solar system, and they're actually seeing that higher density magnetic field that we're poking into, and they're seeing the effect that it has on the heliosphere of our sun. And so it seems to be accurate that we're going through a denser, more intense part of the galaxy at this moment. But I don't think it's accurate to think that this is one day. That is incorrect. Actually, when you look at the Mayan currencies and all this, the information there, it's clear that they describe it as a period.
Like a 20-year period?
Yes, that's right. And that, you know, that the period started in around 1995, 96, 97, exactly. Actually, in 97, something strange happened. The Earth started to grow at its equator, while before the Earth was getting thinner at the equator and rounder. Now it's getting wider at the equator, and we can see that as it started to get wider, there's been more earthquake, there's been more
typhoons and
that's right.
How do you call those?
Yes, hurricanes.
Hurricanes, yeah.
Yes, and as well more volcanic activity and so on. And so, and I think we're approaching a time where it's going to get more extreme as we go through that higher density, because it's compressing our solar system. It's changing the dynamics in our solar system. It's changing the sun, and it's changing the planets. And so, this period is going to overlap 2012, 2013, and so on. But I think we're going to definitely go through a change, a transition during these years. So probably all the way up to like 2015, 16.
Now, this is very interesting that this transition in the galaxy, in our solar system, is happening at the same time that we are in a consciousness transition. In what way do they relate?
Well, this is really a remarkable thing. You see, when I wrote these physics, I realized that all points must have the information of all other points in the universe, and the math actually worked to prove that every single atom is in communication with all other atoms in the universe. And this is
the universe, not just our solar system.
Right, in the whole universe, like 10 to the 80th particles in the whole universe are connected through wormhole structures in the structure of the vacuum that connects everything. And when we write the math for that, you get all the correct answer for the mass of the proton and the energy and so on. And so it's like a hologram. And so everything is organized, highly complex. And this is why life can emerge. Actually, this is why life most likely emerges everywhere in the universe, is because it's highly organized. There's an agent that's creating more and more complexity everywhere, making beings everywhere. And so this is a great coordinated dance. And it may look random to us a little bit because of this. I'll give you an example. If you have a beautiful Persian carpet with amazing, details and so on, but your nose is in it, right?
You can't see it.
You can't see it. It's going to look random. There's all sorts of colors, there might be fleas in there jumping around and all this. You can't see the pattern. But if you push back if you saw enough of it, then you would start to see the pattern and the organization. And this is why we think it's random, because the complexity of the organization is so high, we can't compute it. So when and so there's this amazing dance, this amazing coordination, and it's remarkable, yes, that as our solar system is in transition, so is our level of consciousness.
Now, we are made of the dust of the universe. We are made of atoms. We are interacting with every single thing on the universe. There's this consciousness that human beings have in relationship to animals or plants or whatever. But my question has to do with the free will that we think we have. If we are a dance of the universe, and if we are all connected, how possible is it that we have actually a free will, or we're just dancing? We think we're dancing individually and that I'm creating something, but it's actually, we're just reacting as there's a bigger will of the universe, or just a bigger movement in the universe that's making us move in a certain direction as a whole. Because obviously, it's the whole of humanity that's going into this transition with the planet as part of that universe. And we are all one.
Right.
So in what way does consciousness, how much we can believe that we are actually impacting what's happening, where we are just navigators in this journey?
Right. It's a very good question. And basically, it is both, meaning that it's the collective of all decisions in the universe that produces the flow. So each individual decisions matter. However, if an individual or even a group of individuals is trying to make decisions that are going against the flow, then they're most likely not gonna make it. And you see that in nature all the time. Things that don't work, things that become irrelevant are usually eliminated by nature, right?
Yeah.
And basically, this is a little bit of what we've done with our civilization. We've tried to go against the flow of nature, against higher level of coherency, against, the natural, self-sustaining, collaborative systems of nature, and we've become very destructive. We've destroyed our environment very rapidly, almost in 150 years of industrialization, and we're about to be wiped out by nature. Nature's just not going to tolerate it. So this is our opportunity to realize that there is a fundamental flow, that we can harmonize with it, and that when we do, then we have access to infinite amount of energy, infinite amount of support by nature. When we harmonize by the universe as a whole. So you can try to go against the flow, and you might have noticed in your personal life, when you try to go against the flow, it usually doesn't give you very good result. But and so it's really a big turnaround for
what
necessary.
decides the timing that when humans have gone against the flow? Like, we have 2,000 years of known history that we have been building all along the way with a lot of pillars that have gone against the flow, or we become to believe that there are certain truths that we believe they were true, and now we are realizing that they weren't true. So how long? Because like this period of building these ideas, which are proving to be the wrong ideas, it's been 2,000 years per se,
right.
And now we are on the verge of a change that is pushing. Most of people are having these curiosities and starting to think by themselves that we don't need to depend on powers that govern us, that we can be more people that we can think for ourselves, and by alignment we don't need to depend on government or religions or things like that. So that's why I meant by this timing, that there's a timing in the universe that things are changing in our solar system because we are going in the spiral up. And this is a coincidence with the changing humanity's consciousness as well as in the change of the earth. So is this consciousness coming from rays like cosmic
outside,
rays?
Yes.
That are helping us to open our eyes? Do you think so?
It's a combination of both. We've gone far into destruction and competition and wars and all this, and that has taught us through pain a lot about ourselves and maybe what we want to do next and what we don't want to bring with us next. So that's internal, but at the same time there's external stressors, that are pushing us to shake us to say, hey, wake up, you guys. Things are about to change, and people are sensing that. And it's like, okay, we got to make the shift. So I think there's both, and it's kind of compiling at this point and bringing us to a nexus, in that change. And I wanted to, it's seemingly seen to be appropriately timed by the Mayan calendar, where the Mayan calendar, I was talking to elders that was discussing it, and they were saying that actually, according to the tradition, the year 2011 would be the first year where it goes up in intensity, the earth changes. And the Mayan calendar 2011 year started on March 10, which was, the great tsunami in Japan and all this. So it was so incredibly precisely timed, because definitely that cataclysm brought everything up to the next level of changes.
Yeah, and people's, it was shaken. Now with globalization, you know, it's like whatever happens in Japan it's happening to us in one way or the other because we are living it by the moment.
Right, and as well it's showing us that the technology that we've been using, like nuclear power plants and the engineering we've been using, and you know, like placing a nuclear power plant on a fault line in front of an ocean, you know, all these things, that those are naive engineering approaches and that we need to do something much better.
Yeah, and that's why Germany has quit the plans on nuclear power plants. And
that's right, and other countries are, yeah, at least there's some wisdom that's being gained there.
About your double torus, I got a question. I know that you probably calculated this through mathematical formulas and stuff like that, but it seems to be so related like to the chakra systems, like the energy on the upper chakra going up, spiraling up, and the energy on the first chakra spiraling down, and then the heart chakra in the singularity point. Did you got any inspiration by the chakra system when you started unveiling this?
Yes, actually, absolutely.
Yeah.
I started meditating when I was 11, and I knew about the chakra system earlier on, and certainly at the beginning of my research, almost some 30 years ago, these concepts were already present, and then when I studied ancient civilization, it showed that these concepts were present in the ancient civilization all around the world, and then when I start to study the physics of spin, the structure of space-time and all this, it all kind of came together. Yeah, so it was inspiring for me.
You call the singularity point the one in the equator where things meet.
Yes.
If the spiraling energy is going up is one of the positive or negative, I don't know, it's positive, it's like
Well, you can,
extreme.
yes, you can flip it around, doesn't matter.
Let's say, if the spiraling up is positive
Positive.
energy and the spiraling down is negative energy, then what kind of energy is this singularity point where they both meet?
Okay, so where the spin and counterspin meet, you have stillness. You know,
Okay.
like in the middle of the hurricane,
Yeah.
you have stillness,
Yeah.
right? More still the center point is, faster the hurricane spins and more power it has. And so this is, equivalent there. So basically, the vacuum structure, the energy of all the spins in the universe cancel out at singularity
And
to
what's
produce
the meaning?
absolute stillness. It's-
How important that singularity point is? Why
It's
does it exist? I mean,
Well, why does it exist is a deep question. You could say it exists because all spins are existing, and since all spin exists, it cancels out at the center of every spin.
would it be that from the singularity the spins start, or
That's right.
so this is the mother of the spinning?
That's right. This is the center of existence. This is the point where all knowledge is available in its potential. It's the center of your existence.
So
And when
emptiness would be like they cancel out, so it's empty. It's like emptiness would be, well, we are empty. You know, we're made of atoms that are
Mostly
infinite,
space.
and they don't touch each other. So, one way or another, we are empty, and this is the basis of everything. The emptiness. From emptiness, everything arises.
That's right. And that's why so many masters ask people to turn their senses inward and go towards that point of stillness at the center of their consciousness, because that is the link to the rest of the universe. This is the link to all knowledge. This is the link to God, if you'd like to.
So, in the case of our humanity, as human beings, we have developed in this modern society more the characteristics of our ego and the personality more so than the spirit. We are so focused on the outside world and more so than the inside world in general terms. If that is the essence, why do we have such huge obstacles in our human characteristics like the ego and the personality that don't allow us to just live there and be that?
You know, it's mostly because of our upbringing, is because of the evolution of our society is not very high, and we've lost touch, you know, with this deeper meaning, this deeper knowing, and we have thought that everything is external to us. We've thought that we are separated from everything else, and you know, we've been taught that that's the way our society has been formed. And so since it's a very young, it's like a teenager that doesn't know, that hasn't been understood. Although masters after masters have come to try to explain this to us. And this is why the physics is so important, is because then when you start to, in our society, when you start to realize it in terms of the mathematics and the physics actually telling you that really is how it works, now you have a base to turn your civilization around.
So what you are actually doing is bridging the gap between science and religion, or science and mysticism, I must say.
Yes.
More clearly.
That's right.
Bridging the gap between science and mysticism for a left-brained society that needs like rational, scientific proof of what mystics have been telling us for ages.
That's right.
And through the formulas that you've developed, we are finding that we are all one after all.
That's right. That's
amazing.
Yes, that all these advanced beings that told us about this were correct, and here is actually the math that shows that that is actually true and how it works, and that's really important. Is that now with the math and the physics we can figure out exactly what are the mechanics that makes that true, that makes the fact that everything is connected, that everything is one. And now with the mechanics we can really transcend this civilization.
So this is just something just came to my mind. You are to the regular, conventional scientific society what like the ego is to the human being, in the sense that you come to shake it all up, put everything upside down and help people think in a different way.
Right.
And in one way or the other, looking at from, you've done a lot of inner work and meditation. This idea that of this ego that we have is possibly there just as an obstacle to help us learn who we really are, not to stay in it. It's just a tool.
Right.
But we've identified with the tool, not with the essence.
That's right, exactly right. The ego, and you know, it's just like when you're learning to walk, you're gonna fall. And you need to fall in order to learn to walk. And so, you know, the ego and the misconceptions and, you know, what I would call the veil is crucial to push us, to evolve, to transform, to get deeper truth, and to transcend, you know, previously believed ideas. And, you know, it's always a little bit difficult. It's always a little bit of a push. You know, anybody.
It's part of our makeup. It seems
That's
that
right.
we humans don't learn unless we go through crisis or even suffering. And you know.
But you see that in the universe everywhere. It's not just
everywhere.
human. You know, you see galaxies colliding with each other. You see, you know, there is destruction and there is amazing construction. And so it's part of that cycle of evolution. And how far we have to go in the destruction before we learn the lesson, that's just up to us. Because I think the universe has given us everything we need to be amazingly abundant, thrive in the universe, and, you know, reduce suffering to very minimal.
But suffering I'm thinking about the double torus. If there's the light, if there's the positive, there's the negative. If there's the light, there's the obscurity or darkness.
The darkness.
So both are needed.
Yes.
Yeah, they cancel out in the singularity point.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's an infinite amount of gray between light and dark. And so even if we were to transcend this level of difficulty right now, we'll enter in another level. Maybe everybody's taking care of, there's no more children dying every second from malnutrition, and we've got infinite energy and we can travel through the universe. We will still have, challenges and difficulties, but they'll be at a different level, meaning, it's never gonna be as bad as, starving and dying and all this, but it may be, different levels of that will continue to force us to evolve, because the universe is constantly evolving. It's constantly learning about itself. The universe is a great learning about itself, amazing feedback structure.
So I got two questions about this for you. First of all, when you refer to the universe, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to everything. And, a physicist or an astrophysicist would say, well, that would be 10 to the 28 centimeters. That'd be the bubble, the universe, right? When I think of the universe, I have the big U in front of the universe, meaning the bubble we're in is just one bubble in a larger one, which is a bubble in a larger one, and so on. So I'm meaning all multiverses when I mean universe.
Okay. And what's the source of the universe? How did it came to be?
This is a really profound question. When I was writing the math that led me to the discoveries I've made, and working out the conceptual understanding of it, I came to that place where I had to say, so what was the start? And that was probably one of the hardest moments in my research. It took me weeks, and I was here actually in Joshua Tree when this happened, living in a van, climbing every day, and I actually had to stop work. I could not continue studying for almost 3 weeks, or at least 2, where I had to kind of integrate that maybe, just maybe, there was never a chicken or an egg, that there was never a beginning, and to actually let go of that's a concept of man, but that there's just infinite cycles from infinitely far back to infinitely future, that there is not a start, to let go of the idea of a start, but that we can understand the dynamics, right, at its most profound level, meaning understanding matter creation and universe creation and all this, like one bubble, but that bubble, we can understand when it started, how it got there, and that bubble is in a larger one, that's in a larger one, so there's infinite amount of stars.
So as you go infinitely in through the atoms and find that it is infinite, that's going inside, do you think it's also infinite going outside?
That's right.
So
and that's really kind of the miracle of the whole thing. And so it leaves the miracle in,
So where do you think that human beings have had the need to believe in the existence of a higher power, a God, or a logos, like a God, that makes us believe that there is something bigger, and we have not really maybe understood what this is all about? Why would we, in our makeup, have the need to believe, if we are a reflection of the universe with all these atoms, full of the whole information of the world, of the universe, there must be some information in our genetic codification and our atoms that make us, as a global consciousness, to have this idea of a God. Why would we create something like that?
That's a really good question too. I think that that's because there's internally, because of this connectivity with everything, there's a sense that there's something greater that's manipulating this evolution, meaning that we're part of a larger mechanics that is coordinating everything and that loves all of its creation and that's present everywhere in its creation, omniscient, omnipresent, and so on. So we get that sense inside of us, and so we call it God, and we might make it even look like a human being because we're thinking, in our terms. But I think this is why. It's because internally we know that we're part of a greater movement. And I think that here we're starting to realize, no, it's not some religious God, it's not this God or that God, it's actually the whole multiverse connecting to everything. So God consciousness is everywhere. Yeah.
Now, what comes to mind now is that something about the singularity point again. If that is the source of the spiraling movements in their opposite polarity, but this is the 0 point, wouldn't it be more or like something would make sense that the God consciousness would come or stem from the singularity point?
That's right, absolutely. That would be like the link, that would be like the plug in to the universal net would be the singularity, all the information. It's like the crossing of all the information network in the singularity. And that's why when people go towards the inside, towards their singularity, and reaches there, they have a feeling of enlightenment. All the masters describe it as nirvana, great joy, great feeling of being held by all of the universe, that by being loved by all the universe, and having answer to any question. And so, I think that is actually very, very important. Yeah.
Do you think the universe has a pulse like the heart? Like a pulse?
Absolutely.
Because I have had a feeling and a need to, when I go inside, to connect with the universe pulse, the universal pulse. Mm-hmm. Like by connecting with the universal pulse, even though I might not be totally conscious of what it's about, but if I connect to the universal pulse, I can actually know exactly what to do.
Right.
Would that make any sense? Well, like double Taurus meditation and the heart chakra.
Absolutely.
Do you think so? That's something that all of us humans would need to start doing right now in this time of so much changes and stuff that is freaking people out?
Yeah, actually, going towards the singularity, going towards the center is like going towards a place where, there is stability. In this great chaos, especially at this time, going back to center is like going to the middle of the spin where it's not spinning, so that you can center yourself. And it's very crucial. Yeah, absolutely. It is pulsing with all the energies of the universe. And so on the edge of singularity is that pulse. And by going to singularity, you're harmonizing with that natural pulse of life. And it has positive spiritual impact on you and consciousness impact on you, but as well, it has the possibility of having physiologically positive impact.
Yeah, it's interesting, like when we go inside on meditation, and when we say look inside, when humans start looking inside it's not limited by the physical body. It's limitless. Is that the word, limitless?
Yes, absolutely.
It's endless. We are infinite. Because when we close our eyes and look inside, there's no sense necessarily of the borders or the frontiers of our body, but just as infinite as the whole universe.
That's right. Because there's infinite possibility of division within you. So, yeah, you're reaching infinity within you. People say to me, I can't visualize infinity. And that's because they're trying to visualize infinitely big. But actually, if you go inside, you can experience infinity within yourself.
So the idea of, again, I would like to pick up on the suggestions that you have for people in this time of change and chaos. What would be the most important thing for people to do?
Take the time to go towards singularity. At least, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes every day, to turn your senses inward and go to infinite, the center of your existence.
Like emptiness.
Emptiness.
Or the silence. Or
exactly.
The middle of the hurricane.
The middle of the hurricane.
Most of people's lives nowadays is like a hurricane. So if we go to the middle of it, it will be peaceful.
That's right. That's where peace comes from.
What are we going to gain from
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
So what are we going to gain?
Well, you gain a lot of joy. You gain a sense of self as well. You discover who you really are. It might become more clear what's your dharma, what's your mission. It might remove some of the misconception you have about yourself and the world and everything. And as well, during your day, when you're in the chaos, right? When you're in the spin and you're having a bad day, if you've gone to your center every morning, you can easily go back there and recenter within seconds.
But how do we
But
get
if
there?
you never go there, you don't know where that is.
With so much conditioning that we have about who we are, and that's the identification with who we think we are is much more stronger than the identification with the emptiness or the singularity point in ourselves. So, how can we discern the difference between who we think we are and who we really are by doing this kind of practice?
I think that, when you go towards center, you reach, and you'll reach deeper and deeper sense of it. And the meditation I teach, for instance, in my seminar, help, the person follow the vortex, into that center. You start to discover your essence. It might be something like an essence that was like a really faint memory. When you get there, you might say, wow, I remember this feeling from when I was a child. This is really who I am. And so all the rest of the stuff that we've piled on top of that starts to fall out. All the masks and all the behavior that we've kind of picked up along the way as survival, in this crazy world of ours, kind of starts to fall off. So we become more authentic to ourselves. And all sorts of powers that maybe we didn't know we had comes back to us. Yeah.
There's one thing, we're getting to the close. I don't want to take much more time of your... but there's one thing that I always felt for a very, very long time, and it is that, I know you're scientist, so don't take it personally, but I feel that science fiction is more advanced than science.
Always.
So I was not crazy about thinking that.
No, always. Science fiction is always ahead of science. You can see it in history all along.
Yeah.
Every single or most of the technical developments we've had in our evolution were in stories long before they were invented.
Yeah.
And that's because and this is something that students in science today are not taught, and it's really sad. They should know this, that discoveries and inventions and transcendence of previous ideas come from imagination. They come from, gut feelings, a sense that maybe things are like that instead of like that. Now science is really good to follow up, to see and investigate if that's true. But it starts inside us. And this is why people like Einstein said, imagination is more important than facts, and so on, because it's like, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, it comes from inside you. Innovation comes from inside you, and then you bring it out, and then you see its value. But it starts there. And so somebody, writing a story about going through the galaxy, is going to have to think and to visualize, well, what would the ship look like? And what kind of space drive would it have to use? And all this. And it's going to develop. And since we're connected to the whole universe, that person is going to have a sense of how the mechanics of the universe work that would make it possible for a ship to go across the galaxy and so on. And most likely it's going to be somewhat correct to what is going to come following in the future.
And for people that are very left-minded and rational thinking and very skeptics.
Skeptical.
Yeah, we are both foreigners in English, so skeptics. Where can they research information that, for instance, the thing I've heard lately was that we were kicked out of the moon, and that there's some sort of life over there, and people don't believe that. I mean, they look at the moon and it's all like sand and empty, but there's an idea that maybe there's some life over there and that we got kicked out and that's why we have not come back. Where can people research? Do you know of any information that they can look at?
Well, first of all, on skepticism, this is one of the big problems in our society. The concept of skepticism and closed-mindedness has been confused. So people that think that they're skeptics are basically just closed-minded, meaning they reject new ideas or sets of information offhand without actually truly looking at all the evidence and coming to a scientific conclusion, which would be a true skeptic. And so skepticism is actually a very good thing. You need to have skepticism. You need to take things,
doubts.
Well, you have to investigate and see if a concept is correct and all this. And so, for instance, one of the biggest taboos, and people think that sex is a taboo thing and all this stuff, but actually one of the biggest taboo is extraterrestrial life. And the idea that we've been visited by extraterrestrials. My research shows we've been visited by extraterrestrial life for thousands of years. That this ancient civilization that was very advanced had direct contact. And that's why they had calendars for the whole galaxy, right?
Yeah.
We've been visited in modern times as well. Now, if you're a true skeptic, then because of the internet and the world communication systems we have today, it is very easy to go and look for evidence and, part the stuff that's fake from, stuff that's obviously not fake. You have military personnel that has come forward, that have talked, and astronauts, cosmonauts, people that are the most entrusted people on our planet today that have come forward and actually swore in front of the American Congress and in other countries in front of their governments and so on, that, there was direct contact, that there is, extraterrestrial bases on the backside of the moon, all sorts of things that, seems totally irrational. As you hear them for the first time, it's like, oh my God, what is he saying? Well, it's not so far-fetched in the context of a universe which we're discovering today. Not so long ago, 20 years ago, in most physics conference where I talked about extraterrestrial life, most physicists and astrophysicists said that it's most likely extremely rare that life develop in the universe anywhere else. And the reason why they were saying that is they're saying water is most likely extremely rare, planets are most likely extremely rare, and and those are the two necessary elements. And since then, we've discovered, I always question them, how do you know that water is so rare? Since then, we've discovered that everywhere we look in the universe, and I mean everywhere, even between galaxies, and we see water. We see the spectral line of water. It's everywhere. Now we're discovering that even stars are born in immense water vapor clouds, almost like a placenta, you know, and water is prominent. And we're discovering at the same time that almost every star we look at has planets. And so now, you know, the equations are reversing, and we're realizing most likely there's a lot of life in the universe. We're even seeing amino acid clouds flying through space. And so all the elements are there for life. And there's absolutely no reason that societies on other planets would have thousands of years of evolution on us. And you know, you see what we've done in 150 years. We went from like horse and buggy to like going to the moon, right? You know, imagine that we had 1,000 years advancements on that. We might be going to the other side of the galaxy like we go to Sydney, Australia today, which 100 years ago seemed completely far-fetched. You know, and so the idea that we're alone is erroneous. The idea that other civilization could not make it here. The idea that other civilization could not make it here is erroneous. And so, you know, there's most likely a lot of life, a lot of possibility for that life to visit us. And there is thousands, millions of pieces of evidence, independent witnesses, very interested people, and so all that put together, if you're a true skeptic,
Star Wars.
you have to realize, you know, this is the only conclusion you can get to.
Well, it seems that we're stepping from, like in the Middle Ages, believing that the Earth was flat, to realizing that the Earth is round. Like what Galileo did, from Copernicus to Galileo, to believing that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but
of the solar system,
yeah, the sun is the center of the solar system.
Right.
And those were really extremely shocking changes, to the point that the church incarcerated Galileo for a lifetime.
Right.
I don't know what right they did that, but anyway.
Right.
So it seems that we're on the verge of that change, of believing that we're the only ones in the universe, to understanding and realizing that there's life everywhere.
That's right.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing thing.
And what you've done is just so, no words from my part to thank you for all that you are bringing forward, because I think it's the missing link.
Thank you.
And I know, and I'm sure that the rest of the people that are here and people that know you or for the work you're doing feel this immense gratitude, because it was something that we were really, really needing strongly, and you came along, and you know, it's like you had all this brain and strength to go in that direction, to bring something that was so crucial for humanity's development. So I just want to thank you for the time you've given us, for all the information that you've shared with us. I know there's so much more, but I think in a next opportunity that we'll meet again, we'll go a next level. Because till people get ready to listen more stuff, so we will flow with that.
All right. Well, you know, I really appreciate, and I want to say thank you so much. And at the same time, I couldn't do it without you. I couldn't do it without everybody else. It's a groundswell movement, and I'm just doing my little piece in that movement to like bring it to the next level, and we're so close. So thank you for all your work and your support.
We're going to be waiting for you in Ecuador.
Thank you.
Yeah, you better
I
plan
look
on that.
forward to it.
Great, Nassim. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We'll
Hope
see
you
soon.
guys enjoyed it too.